First of all, I want to introduce the panelists for this event. I'll start with you, Gwarlan. You're a professor of marketing, and what's your story? How did you get into that, and how did you get into the creators economy?
Yes, thank you, Matteo. So I'm Gwarlan de Kerviller. I'm full professor in marketing at ESX School of Management. The school has two campuses, one in Paris and one in Lille, but I'm in Paris. So I specialized in digital marketing, and I got interested in influencer marketing because I think that in terms of research also and in terms of practice, it's really a very fascinating topic. It evolves all the time. We'll discuss that today with an ecosystem which is complex and not so well known. And that was part of the reason, right, I wrote a book on how to succeed in influencer marketing. It was to help managers, practitioners better understand what is influencer marketing and what is behind maybe sometimes simplified image of what is creator economy and what are actually the creators doing in their everyday life.
So, welcome to be on board. You got in touch with us around our Paris event, which leads me to Gordon next, who got in touch with us around our London events. We met the first time when you joined an event of us there. And you're also an author and influencer marketing consultant in London.
Yeah, and it was lovely to meet you in London. It was a really fabulous event. I loved actually, connecting with your community. So I'm also the host of the Influence Global podcast, which we've had something like about 95,000 download listens.
Nice.
I'm also the co-founder of Influencer Strategists, which is a global community of influencer marketing agencies and platforms. And I also run the Gordon Glenister Academy, which is effectively an influencer and personal brand program designed to help you leverage and build and grow your influence. And Matteo, I came into this sector by absolute accident. So I'd actually
Mhm.
come into it from the promotional products industry. I used to run a trade association, and I felt there was a real need to create best practice in influencer marketing, which is the reason why I got involved with the Branded Content Marketing Association. For me, in the early days of influencer marketing, 2018 or so, it was still seen as a bit of a Wild West, still a little bit of that, but a lot of professionalism has come into the market now. And I guess that's something that we'll talk a little bit more about.
Thank you so much for joining today. And you then connected me with Jason because one of the things actually that I immediately first dreamt of and then actually executed in this community is I didn't want to have any borders there. I didn't want to stay in Germany where it started. So also for this panel, I decided France, UK, and US. That covers the Western world. So happy to welcome Jason, who I got connected through Gordon with. Jason, you are also an author and a consultant in this area.
I am, and thank you for having me, Matteo. This is great to connect with everyone here. I'm based in Louisville, Kentucky, in the United States. And I tell people I've been practicing influence marketing for 35 years. And most people look at me strangely when I say that. And it's because I really and truly, I'm a public relations communications professional by trade. And in the olden days, before the internet exploded, a media relations or a public relations professional would find third-party people with audiences, media members, and work through them to communicate messages to an audience. To me, that's all that influence marketing really is we're finding people who have established their own audiences in the social media space, and we're trying to work through them as businesses and brands to communicate something to their audiences. So the practice is the same. The environment is a little different. The ecosystem has changed, and obviously the internet changes things. But that's where I come from, is this sort of rooted in a couple of decades worth of being a communications professional and finding influential people or influential publications or influential organizations to connect with audiences, which kind of informs my perspective on things. I do also teach. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Louisville here in Kentucky in the United States. My book is called Winfluence. I had a podcast by the same name for quite a long time. but got busy enough with client work that the podcast had to take kind of a side, status for me. But I am an active practitioner. I work with brands every day on influence marketing strategy and execution. And so I'm very active in the space.
Nice. Welcome. Cheers to actually check out your podcast then as well, and listen to a couple of episodes. Obviously, we are also planning to bring all those discussions in a podcast format so that I can finally listen to it on the go. Okay, so let's dive right into the questions, I would suggest. We did prepare a few questions, but please, everyone, if you have anything that you want to add, if you have anything that you want to ask or think that we're missing any direction, feel free to write it in the chat, in the Q&A, or raise your hand so I can quickly call you, make you a panelist, and you can ask your question directly. So the first question is obviously the question of the whole event. What is the creator economy actually? And we had a couple of discussions beforehand. I'm curious how this works out, but who would like to start giving their idea?
Gwarlan, do you want to start and then I'll
Okay,
follow?
okay,
Correct.
perfect. Yeah, one thing I wanted to highlight, and I think it has been mentioned, but it is complex. And so the creator economy is actually made of content creators. So who are these people? They are people who actually spend most of their time creating content and then sharing it on social media. It might seem easy, but it's not, because it means that if you want to emerge in a saturated environment, you actually need to work a lot to be able to publish every day content, to post them, to track the results, and to make sure that on the platform you have all access to the data and that you improve over time to have the best content, the best video on the right platform at the right time. So I would say that the creators are actually people who are passionate, dedicated, who have talent, and who work a lot. So creator economy is really about creating new content and generating interest, and that's not easy. So I think that would be really things that I want to emphasize, especially to an audience of would-be influencers. It requires talent and efforts.
And I would just support that, I think, further, because it's all about being consistent and really understanding your niche. In fact, one of the big growths within the creator economy is the super niche. In other words, rather than being like a lifestyle influencer, really honed down on a particular area of specialism. And in the same way that, a creator in a way is still a brand, you are a brand. We all are brands. And, if before you launch a brand, you need to do your research. And I would suggest even before you create your own first post, is really understand about what value you are likely to bring to that audience. And also one of the things I teach is what I call my 10 by 10. So go and have a look at 10 other creators in your specific niche. And then actually look at the last 10 posts that they have created and look at whether they've been successful or not in terms of engagement or comments or all of those types of things. Because from that, you will get 100 pieces of insight. And from that 100 pieces of insight, you'll be able to distill that down to about 20%. Because what you want to do is find the right type of content that really works, not what you think works. And there's a real difference between the two. Likes of Taylor Swift, I wrote about this in my book actually. Taylor Swift, of course, has been a phenomena that we all recognize and like, and she's even got a sub brand called the Swifties. But what has really fascinated it with me is that she realized the importance of developing a fan base. And what she did is before she was out in doing the tour, she would spend hours and hours and hours allowing people to do selfies with her. That wasn't just because she was a nice person and she thought that would be fun. She realized that audience were going to share that multiple times. Because, if we say we're great, then that's one thing. But if other people say that we are, it creates real, true advocacy. And that's what influence is all about, really, is getting other people. The famous saying that Jeff Bezos said years ago, a brand is what somebody says about you when you're not in the room. The other thing I think is important to realize that things like creator burnout is a real thing. Creators can be sort of overwhelmed with what they see, and they can get easily frustrated by the fact they're not getting the impact that they hoped they were going to have. And now with AI added into the loop, there's more content than ever before. So how on earth do you stand out and be relevant? My answer to that is to be authentic and never lose your tone of voice, because the people that follow you, engage with you, they are the people that will build you to be the person that you want to be. So never sell out to your audience as well. That's one thing that I really don't like, is when you see an influencer or creator that is doing brand deal after brand deal after brand deal, left, right, and center. And it can they can lose the reason why people are following him. We don't want to always follow somebody that's advertising all the time. We want to see that natural, organic content.
The only other thing I would add to that, to the both of the responses there, is that if we're talking about the creator economy, yes, the creators, the content creators are at the center of that. But if you want to talk about the economy, you have to widen that lens out a little bit. There's a lot of support mechanisms around those creators, whether it be talent managers and agencies that work to represent those creators in negotiations with brands. It could be consultants like me who are in between the brand and the creator or the talent manager. And then there's even marketing software services out there that focus on influencers and being able to not only identify them, but also measure the impact of influence campaigns. So when you're talking about the economy and you go out a little bit, the creators are at the center of it, but there's a lot of other job functions and people that fuel that economy too. So let's not forget those as we have these conversations.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally,
ve-
totally agree.
Very true. I also want to add that there are obviously the platforms themselves, like the social media platforms. Then there are also the brands and retailers. I mean, obviously, you call a retailer then a brand as soon as they are on the platform. What else? What other parts are there? Can you think of anything else?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, we mentioned also the talent managers. I think that it's also
Hmm.
important to come to really understand that creators have their own agenda, that they have a career to build. And so as a brand, you need to take into account also what are the objectives and what's the path of an influencer. And one of the revenue streams, because we are talking about, the economy, is definitely from collaboration with brands, but it's not the only
Hmm.
one. And I think for a content creator, it's really important to think of, different streams of revenues. And that's where, other players also come into the picture. So you mentioned platforms. Definitely platforms have a role to play because they are interested in keeping the audience, keeping the business and the collaboration on their own platform in a way. But also, if you think about podcast, about the fact that creators are now launching many other activities, it sort of enlarge, the number of players and the number of uh, elements that are into this ecosystem, if I may say.
And just to add to that, actually, that's why we've seen an explosion in platforms like Patreon, so membership platforms. Because you know what, when you had the global pandemic, actually initially it wasn't a good space for the creators, because all of those brand partnership deals pretty much came to a halt overnight. So one thing that creators did do is realize that they could not rely entirely on brand partnerships. And
Mm.
therefore, they were starting to build their own communities with their own membership models, with their own sponsorship. You're now starting to get creators on the speaker circuits. You're seeing them generate income from um, as you know, as I say, not just speaking at events, but actually the other big area that we haven't touched on is creator brands.
Yeah.
So some of these things are where creators have obviously been having an amount of money from a brand deal, and they're suddenly starting to think, well, actually, why don't I create my own brand? And they've been involved now in becoming creator directors, like, and they've then gone on to do really exciting things that they've taken a stake in a business. Because there's like tons of e-commerce brands out there that have grown hugely, and they realize, well, we've got the product, we've got this, we've got the entire supply chain. What we don't have is the audience. And that, of course, is exactly what an influencer has. So you can see almost overnight what a perfect marriage that is.
Um, Thanks for the transition into like how do each and every like one of those players in the creator economy work together. Um, Before I continue that, generally it seems like the creator economy is basically a small scale copy of the media ecosystem that has been there before. In the end, big TV stations basically had the same problems and issues to figure out, just without the immediate feedback loops. So because they didn't have immediate click numbers, they had I think they used like telephone questions to figure out who watched what. Um, so in the end, the ecosystem changed from being very unflexible and big in scale to a very very small scale ecosystem. And in the end, each and every creator, also as discussed here, is basically a little media company trying to figure out their niche. And as Gordon, you said, the super niche, basically, right?
Yeah, and I think what we're going to start to see more now, the pendulum is starting to switch into the creator having far greater control, because they command these sizable audiences, and more importantly, it's not just the size of the audience, it's the engagement of their audience, which
Yeah.
if you look at it,
Mhm.
you look at these big players now that have got Cristiano Ronaldo, the biggest influencer, has got over 800 million followers on Instagram. I mean, that commands a huge amount of value for a single post that he can command probably $1 million or something, which is huge. So you can see straight away that obviously it's not all Matt, it's all not all about brand awareness. Sometimes lots of brands now don't have huge budgets, and they will work with micro and nano influencers because their level of engagement is often far greater. So if you're looking at potentially wanting to start a new brand, for example, or build, then you might decide to have a selection of micro and nano influencers which have got
Yeah.
specific element communities that would be great for a brand to tap into, not just in terms of selling product, but in terms of research as well. Where do you get an opportunity for a brand to really have their audience right in front of them and give them that level of feedback?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree for the micro influencers, and also what we see is that some brands, they are, very desirable, and so what they play is even like gifting, and that's then they have managed to have content that is very organic and very authentic. You mentioned, Gordon, the authenticity. Brands are definitely looking for that. And having a team of influencers that are really passionate about the brand and that will communicate against gift in a way is definitely sort of win-win. Of course, content creators cannot only live on gifts, but having also sometimes, gifts from brands that they really love, I think is also part of this creator economy today.
I would
I
just
th
add something to that in terms of Gordon's reference a minute ago to Mateo's reference a minute ago, how the influencer or the creator economy is a lot like the old media economy with television broadcasting and all that good stuff. I totally agree with that, and actually this ladders on to, I think Missy Isaacson asked this question in the chat. How do you increase your chances of reaching success as a content creator? So For the content creators out there, or the aspirational, I'll answer that question. But if you are also looking to be in a brand and work with content creators, this is relevant too, because the answer to that question, whether it's a TikTok algorithm or doing lives or not, the answer to that question is the way that you can increase your chances of reaching the audiences consistently is to focus on creating great content. That's always been the answer. The TV stations that won 25 years ago were the ones that had great programming, great news coverage, great content that they put out there. The influencers that are successful today are the ones that, regardless of the platform, regardless of whether they're doing it live or they're doing a lot of post-production and making things look fancy before they post it, regardless of what platform they're on, they're creating great content for the audience that they have focused on, just like any media property would. If content creators are doing that, they're going to be successful. If you are looking as a brand or an agency to partner with content creators, you need to look for content creators who are doing that. And kind of to tie it all back into a loop, the ones who are doing it well are also the ones that have the Patreons or the Substacks or the podcasts or the other monetization streams, because they take their business and their brand seriously, and they're building a media platform, not just posting on TikTok.
Yeah, fully agree. And they will attract actually talent managers who will invest on them. So there will be like a virtuous cycle where if you create great content and you have attention from your audience, then you actually have not only brands, but also agencies that will support you and will help you move even to the next stage of audience development.
And that's one thing I could just add to, which I think is a really interesting thing, the role of a talent manager, because some of these creators, they've worked really hard at building their audiences. And some are not necessarily as business savvy and have often missed commercial opportunities, or just don't like dealing with business relationships. So actually working with a talent manager can play a big and important role in helping them land opportunities that can be quite sizable for them.
Yeah.
What this discussion shifted to now is basically the relationship between the creator and the platform like TikTok, Meta, and what else is there? LinkedIn, actually, and so on.
YouTube.
So
Instagram.
YouTube. Oh yeah, perfect. So the thing is that obviously the platform needs you to create good content, because that's wants you to create good content. They want to give you a reach. If you actually make people stay, that's my assumption, and that's obviously not wrong. But do you know details? Like, do you have anything to add there? Because in the end, the platform can only beat. In the end, we're all trying to get the attention of the people to our platforms so that they spend a lot of time there. What are the strategies there?
Yeah. So I interviewed, for instance, for my book, I interviewed managers from TikTok, and definitely they want to attract the top influencers and they want to help them. So what they do is that they give them a lot of tools and trainings, and they also put them in touch with brands in order to facilitate the income that they can get from their content creation. So obviously the platform will actually be a partner, a business partner for a good content creator, giving, as I say, tool training, access to brands, sort of promoting the talent, because then for the platforms, it's a really winning situation, because then the brands will also advertise on their platform. And so what I saw from TikTok example is that they put actually a lot of resources, financial and human resources, to be part of the economy, to help brands and content creators to be more successful on their platform.
Totally, because that's how they will survive, to have the best content. Actually, in the podcast area, there has been this battle. I think Spotify started it when they were basically buying creators or paying creators to only publish their podcasts on the Spotify platform. I didn't hear that much afterwards anymore, so I don't know how that worked out. But in the end, there will also be a battle for talent in the future, I guess, on the different platforms.
Sorry, Jason, go on.
I was just going to say there will certainly be, and that's the one thing that creators need to keep in mind is if TikTok is providing you with all these resources and training and opportunities for brands, eventually what they're going to get to is, hey, if we're going to provide you with all this, we don't want you to post on Instagram. We don't want you to post on YouTube because that makes TikTok, better and have more of an audience share. And so we need to, keep that in mind, because while the content creator may see that as an advantage and say, hey, I'm in partner with TikTok and they're helping make me money, so I'm going to continue to do that. But if something, strange happens, like TikTok gets outlawed in the United States or any other country for that matter, now all of a sudden your income goes away. So the creator's got to be smart and say, look, I'm going to post in a bunch of different places because I've got to be able to sustain my brand should one of them go away. It's that, sort of that old rule of, don't let one client, take more than 80% of your business, because if you lose them, you're gone. You don't have a business anymore. So that's something we need to watch out for.
Yeah, and I think just to add to what you've said, Jason, I think there are different people, different audiences on different platforms, different age demographics, so that people could follow you on LinkedIn will be different to the people that follow you on TikTok and Instagram. And so being mindful of, the type of content that you create that's going to hold the algorithm. And I often say to people is, think like you're working for TikTok, think like you're working for LinkedIn. What would you want to happen? Fundamentally, the tables were, you want people to stay on the platform, you want people to recommend what you do, and therefore everything that you need to do. So if you're creating a LinkedIn post, then actually, and somebody puts a comment, don't just leave it there. Like the comment and ask that person another question, because what the algorithm want is more and more and more comments. And so if you do that, you are thinking like the platform.
True. Actually, I want to quickly look at the question of Anitra Griffin LLC. I guess sounds like a company name, not like a personal name. You've said that creator economy seems like a small-scale version of the media industry, but I also think it seems to have crossover with the entertainment industry. Thus, my question: are there avenues that creators can use to obtain a talent manager agent? What are your thoughts on whether or not this is worth pursuing?
So I'll jump in and answer that first and let the other ones add on. Definitely you can research and find talent managers and talent agencies out there that work with content creators. There's hundreds of them, thousands of them. And you can reach out and say, hey, I'm a content creator. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my audience. Here's what I'm trying to do, but I need help. Would you consider me? More often than not, they're going to have some sort of limitation on, well, we don't really accept anybody with, less than so many thousand followers, and that's fine. You can always find folks that are willing to help you. But I would also be a little careful of that. You need to make sure that you're talking to other content creators who maybe have worked with talent managers before, because talent managers are like anything else. There's good ones and there's bad ones. And to be honest with you, a lot of the larger talent agencies operate much more like the entertainment industry. They take larger percentages of their clients as a commission, of their clients' fees as a commission. And their job is to go out and get as many big contracts as possible. The problem when you're doing that with a content creator who has, let's say, 75,000, 100,000 followers on their networks is they're not Cristiano Ronaldo. They don't have 800 million followers. And so the talent managers are used to asking for 6 and 7 figure deals with brands. Well, you can't do that with someone who has 50,000 followers on TikTok. And so the talent agents, the big ones, often operate on a scale that is really not scalable downward. And so what happens is you sign with a talent agency that has this big roster of clients, and they put a price on your content that is beyond the reasonable, level for a brand to pay for someone who doesn't have several 100,000 or millions of followers. I've actually had 5 content creators that I've worked with in the past year have come to me and said, hey, I've been using this talent agency. I'm getting less deals. I'm getting less money because they've overpriced me, and now no brands want to work with me. So there's this middle, level, this middle class, if you will, of the creator economy that's sort of in this limbo of, do I hire a talent manager and risk that they overprice me and I can't get work? Or do I continue to do it myself and have those frustrations of not having the help?
Yeah.
So I would just be very careful as to who you look for and who you find. But definitely you can reach out to almost anybody out there who does talent management, and say, hey, I'm looking for representation. What I've found about talent managers is they have their own little ecosystem of communication. If one is not a great fit for you, they'll refer you on to someone who might be.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is also maybe the talent manager perspective, because I've also discussed for my book with actually talent managers. And one thing that they were also a little bit cautious about is actually to take a small content creator and spend time and energy to promote this content creator. And once he figured or she figured out how to get deals, then he actually break the contract. So from the talent manager perspective, there is also a risk sort of, balance to take into account. So thinking also about long-term relationship, what type of contract and how you can secure the talent manager to say, okay, you're not going to spend 2 years promoting me, and then once I'm kind of like starting to be profitable in a way, I'll find another agent or something. So I think to your point, Jason, it has to be really like a clear discussion and sort of a win-win situation where you really understand what the content creator can bring, and what's the commitment and what the talent manager can bring, because as you said, Jason, they take also part of the revenue. So it needs to be someone who really has a network, and with whom you can have a long-term sort of trusting relationship, I would say.
So I want to
Great.
just add to that because I think that's spot on. I mean, it's like, often it's very exciting for a creator potentially to have their first deal, but there's good and bad in the talent industry. There aren't really any standards, which is something that we worked quite hard at the BCMA. We've actually got a 15-page guide on how to find the best talent agency. So if Matteo, any of your community want that, then I can make that available to them. Typically, a talent management agent will take 20% of what you do. That's sort of an industry standard. But what I would want to do is not just jump into the first one, is find out of the creators that you've worked with who have got deals, because there is also another thing that I've seen before where among the roster is actually only the top 20%, top 10, 15% who end up landing deals after deals after deals. And they're often the others are there as a bit of a shop window. So you need to be a little bit careful, because once you are tied into this contract, then it means that you are excluded sometimes from actually doing any other deal. So just to add to what Jason was saying, you could end up finding that you've done the wrong deal. So do your research like anything.
Yeah. And Matteo, I think there is a question
Yeah.
on some of the biggest influencers, right?
Yeah.
Utilizing the
So
strategy.
quick adding to Gordon, yes, I think the audience would love to have that guide. I would actually send a newsletter in the next days or weeks, then anyways, basically recapping this event. So if anyone is not yet on the Social Rising newsletter, I just shared the sign up form. And I can also share it then obviously in the individual event groups. So I'll try to get it out there to the people who are here today. So it would be great to have that, Gordon. And yes, Gwarlan, there is another question of the ad hoc team in the chat. We see some of the biggest influencers utilizing the strategy of always partnering with a small handful of brands for all their content over a long period of time. Is this a strategy that could be adopted by smaller player? What do you think are the calculus for influencer regarding how many brands they work with?
I think that's a key question and a tricky one for influencers, like, to what extent they work with different brands, how they actually really manage to have a strategy. Again, it depends if you're starting, and then, it's hard to really say no to different brands that are coming to you, or if you're mature. Once you're mature and you have, as we said, also a talent manager, and you're able to figure out sort of a coherence in terms of which brands you want to work with and why, then I mean, there are pluses and minuses in long-term relationship with brands. It's sure that if you have a long-term relationship, it's a secure in terms of revenues, because for content creators, one thing to keep in mind is that their future revenues is never guaranteed. So having long-term is kind of like securing your activity. At the same time, it means that you are a bit cornered and stuck and maybe too much associated with that brand. Then working with too many different brands also has some issues in terms of what's your positioning and who are you, and what are your passion, because you cannot be really passionate about 100 of brands in the same category of products. And then you appear too commercial and not really authentic. So I think this balance again is really something to be discussed also with your agency, trying to figure out what should be the right strategy and when you can say yes or no. But that's definitely a key tricky question, I would say. I would love to hear also, the opinion of Jason and Gordon on that, but I think it's a tricky question.
Sure, I'll give you the brand perspective. So, the clients that I work with, we prefer long-term content partnerships with our content creators slash influencers. And the reason we do is because we see there's you got to remember, go back to the old, qualities of advertising. What made a good advertisement? It was not just reach, but also frequency. And so I can go and partner with one content creator who has 1 million followers and reach 1 million people potentially. But if I do a deal with that partner over the course of a year, and I'm doing 2 posts a month, every 2 weeks, I'm going to reach those people over and over again, which reinforces that message. So my clients on the brand side prefer longer term partnerships where it's not just I'm doing one sponsored post, but I'm doing a series of content over time to reinforce the brand selling points, the product selling points, the unique selling proposition, et cetera, to that audience, so that I basically, after a certain period of time, that content creator's audience knows me, they trust me. That means they're going to be potentially buying from me over my competitors. So my clients prefer the long-term partnership. I will say that, the one-offs, the giveaways and things like that, they're very useful for driving engagement. They're very useful for increasing social followers. But keep in mind, too, these long-term partnerships aren't just about the content creator posting on their channel. The long-term partnerships that we develop or I develop for my clients are typically, we want the content creator to create content on their channel, yes, but we also want that content on our channels. We also want to partner with them to create even internal content for our teams and whatnot about our products and services. Help us build out educational content for our audience. Help us write user manuals, things like that. So depending upon the industry and the vertical that you're working with, a content creator can be far more useful than just making sure they're posting on their channel. And that's where those long-term partnerships really pay off for brands and why they like them so much.
I love that, Jason, and I'm obviously completely in agreement with it. And if you think about the average time it takes for somebody to like 7 touch points at least between a cold outreach and a conversion. Think about when you see something on television or you see a billboard for the first time, you don't rush out and go and buy that product, because there is a period of trust building that is so essential. So I think all the evidence at the moment is that, and we're now the biggest economy that we've talked about, the creator economy. Actually, I would suggest it's the attention economy, because that's where the new oil is in grabbing attention. And so your content has got to hook well. That it really has to stand out. And a brand is tapping into, not you, it's tapping into your ability to influence your audience. And that's why some of these superficial TV channels that have just stars, Love Island and the like, where we get people that have just follow them because they've been on TV. The relevance of that audience niche is quite low often. And where you've got somebody that really owns their expertise. And the other thing I think is important to say that where brands really use creators well is that they don't just use them as media amplifiers. They bring them into the conversation much, much earlier. In fact, they can actually use them as what we call creator takeovers. So they can actually be brought into the campaign and execute and run it. I'll just quickly share with you an example of an agency which I wrote about in the book a little while ago. And it was a London-based agency which also had a Brazilian partner agency over there, and they got a brief to create a new product for South America. So it was already a sweetener, sugar sweetener in North America, and they were going to launch it in South America. Different audience with a different. So they decided to bring 5 creators to a hotel for 3 days. And it was an immersive workshop. And what they asked the creators to do is create us a brand new packaging, brand identity, literally from the very, ground zero upwards. And what these creators did, because they were, I think, related to the fitness industry, they were all reaching out to their audiences at the same time and asking their advice and opinions about what they liked and what they don't like. So when the brand actually came to be launched, which was a great success, by the way, you can imagine that not only those creators were going to be sharing it, but all of those influencers, followers of those influencers were also involved. And the return on investment was quite considerable because the brand was so impressed with the campaign, it actually bought the agency.
Yeah. Actually, this is a format that I've been dreaming of as well, like bringing the people together. But I probably talked to you about that already. So here's the thing: time is flying. I just wanted to make everyone pay attention to the clock because we have an hour here in total. So first of all, I just made a post where I shared each and every LinkedIn of all the panelists and me here. Also a link to the book, Gwarlan. I did not find yours on Amazon, if that is correct.
It is on Amazon. If you type Amazon and my name, it's me.
Okay, then it was just me not doing enough
I
research.
will, I will, I will, I will add it. No worries.
Perfect. So check out the books. Obviously, follow them on social media. It's on LinkedIn. I guess that's all your main channel. We did have a few questions. I want to quickly try to go through the questions that currently have been asked, and then as an end discussion, talk a bit about the future. So Missy Isaacson asked a question about how many times a week minimum should you post on the most popular platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, as she's a full-time student and part-time worker.
So I'll throw this out there. If you're on TikTok, you probably need to be posting several times a day. TikTok is one of those that rewards frequency. For the other channels, I always encourage people to test, post once or twice a day, and then, post once a day for a couple of weeks and see where your analytics point you, because it's going to vary depending upon the channel.
Again, just want to confirm what Jason has said, test and measure, test and measure. When you're busy and you've got a lot of things going on, batch it. So in other words, create content on one day when you're feeling the most creative. And actually go do a lot together in one. I do a lot of my content on a Sunday when I'm not got work interruptions, have a cup of coffee. I'm even using ChatGPT to come up with script ideas and stuff like that. And then I use teleprompter to do that, and it's less than 30 seconds. And that way I feel that it's good for me. But obviously I think and Jason is right about TikTok. That is a huge it sucks content like you wouldn't believe. So you better be ready for the long form.
Yeah.
And if you're starting to do this, that's the problem. If you then start to do all this amazing content and then you stop, it's affecting, like, you fed the beast and now you can't feed it anymore.
Yeah, so I definitely think that as also interviewing influencers, some of them have like a planning, like almost 6 months in advance with all the things like you have events that like spring break, Easter, Christmas, Black Friday, like in advance that these are times where you need to speak up. On top of your regular post. So having sort of a planning of 6 months ahead. And I think in terms of taking breaks, I think it's important because algorithm can really get you nuts as an influencer, checking every second the success of any video or any post. So having this kind of like, okay, I'm taking, I'm sort of recording in advance a lot of content I'm writing that will allow you then, and of course planning in advance what will be posted when, etc., allows you to take some breaks without feeling guilty and without necessarily having a big penalty on your performance. So that's again, it really highlights the notion that you have to be professional, that being a content creator is not just something you do on the side. If you want to be serious about it, it's a strategy.
Can I just ask one quick final thing on this, which we haven't covered? Guys, you need to think about having a media deck. Media kit or media deck is like having brands buy you. And what they want to see, or what your engagements are, all of those things. Again, if you guys want any examples of those, Matteo, I'm happy to share with you an example of what they might look like. You can even go onto Canva or Pinterest and just type in creator media kits, and you'll see some examples there.
Would be great if you could share your favorite one that you saw, so I can add it into the follow-up email. But yes, I'm aware that there are a lot out there. Actually, thanks for also answering the second question that Missy Isaacson asked there. Niels asked the question. I have a question concerning the form of compensation for a YouTube video to promote a product. I would like to be paid for 1,000 views. Is this something that becomes more popular if a brand paid me $40 for 1,000 views and I managed to reach the target audience with YouTube ads for $20? It could be a great business model for us. So basically, the business model of selling it for more than you buy it.
So in my experience, especially with YouTube videos, obviously, if you're talking about $40 for 1,000 views, that's a cost per thousand CPM approach. And you're typically not going to see that type of pricing from YouTube content creators. Now, that might be what you are paid by YouTube if you're monetizing through their advertising network. But a CPM is really more of a broadcast, views and listens on a podcast approach. For a YouTube video, and you got to remember too that if you're saying I want to be paid $40 for 1,000 views, a brand is not going to have a $40 budget. They're going to have a $40,000 budget. So you better be able to promise a heck of a lot of views to make sure that you're getting that target. And if you are, that's great. If the content that you're creating is driving whatever the math is there, I'm not very good at math, but I'm sure it's probably, what is that, 100,000 or 1,000,000 or whatever it is. If you can drive that many views, then you can go to your sponsors for your YouTube content and say, I charge a CPM model. I'm going to drive 1,000,000 views and you're going to pay me, $40,000 or whatever the math might be. That's how you would do it for a podcast, mostly for podcasts as well. What I see content creators doing more of, though, especially on YouTube, is saying, hey, my average video views is this, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to endorse your product. I'm going to incorporate it organically and naturally into the flow of my content. I'm going to make it so that I'm endorsing your product. And that carries a premium value of a flat rate of ABCXYZ, whatever that price may be. I don't typically get CPM models from YouTubers. You're going to pay me $10,000 and I'm going to make sure that this video is really focused on accomplishing the goals that you want to accomplish.
Yeah. And just on that, for brands also, usually what they do is that they also give a certain number of views, but then they don't necessarily specify I mean, like the advertising agency won't necessarily specify how many posts, how many influencers. You don't need to be like super specific, but the idea is what's going to be the reach overall, and then you can try different things to get to that reach.
Yep.
But that's a learning curve.
Nice.
And I answered to Ash
Yeah,
about building a collection. Also, with my
connection.
interviews with content creators, it's all about rapid, quick, targeted answers to any question, frequent interaction. Of course, it depends on the size of your audience. But for the consumers, for the people on the internet, having a sense of proximity and direct connection with the content creator is super important. And that requires time. It means that you need to be always checking on questions and answering them with relevant answers rapidly, I would say. And Gordon, yes, you added polls and questions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Let's add something in written if you have any more to add. I want to actually jump to the last question because I think we already covered the first third of actually what we prepared in questions. So I already see that the future topic ideas are becoming a longer list just based on this conversation. So I'm looking forward to having more conversations here, both with everyone here and other panelists. I want to do a closing round now for everyone and combine the last two things that we prepared beforehand. Where do you think we are heading? And how could the ecosystem improve? What are your thoughts there? Yeah.
Well, I think that if I were to answer that question very quickly, I would just simply say that I think we're heading to more longer term partnerships for content creators with brands, the larger content creators. But I think brands are also starting to realize that they can get a lot more bang for their buck if they go with user generated content campaigns where they're changing product, not cash. For content with smaller follower folks who maybe don't even consider themselves content creators. I think the UGC user generated content economy is going to become a lot bigger for brands in the next few years. And I think the only other thing I would say about the future is we don't know. It changes every day and something new comes about. I'm waiting for the next big social network to emerge. We didn't after Facebook happened, we didn't think there would be something else. Well, then there was Instagram and we didn't think there would be something else. And then there was TikTok. And so I'm waiting on the next big thing. So the future is a big question mark. The best thing that you can do is go to work every day in this creator economy, knowing that change is going to be a constant and you have to be able to adapt and roll with the punches.
On my end, I think a key thing is AI. That will be a challenge to take into account. So content will be partially created with AI. There will be a question on whether or not the pictures are the real ones, what's real, what's fake. And I think again on that end, being ready to use AI, but keep parts that are human and where you really create with your own thoughts, your own ideas, I think would be crucial. So I think taking the easy path and thinking I'm going to become a content creator with 100% of my content from an AI, then how do you differentiate yourself? And you will be the same as someone else who has just used the same prompt or the same fake image. So I think being cautious on that, maybe being trained will be important.
And I think, other than what the guys have already said, I think we'll see a rise of the professional creator, what I call the content creator entrepreneur, that is not just literally amplifying and creating content, but getting involved in having their own brands, and being a thought leader and expert as well. We focus more widely probably on a B2C type content creators, but I think we'll also see, and we're already starting to see a rise of the B2B influencer. And by the way, a lot of the people in that sector don't refer themselves as influencers. They might be authors, they might be consultants. I mean, probably Jason, all three of us here are are within that area, but perhaps label ourselves as authors or speakers or whatever they may well be. So I think we're going to start to see that more and more. And of course, e-commerce is booming when it comes to what's happening, and a lot of creators in the e-commerce space as well.
True. And I already have so many questions I would like to ask, but I want to keep it strict here and obviously open also opportunities for the future. Thanks to all of you for joining me today here for discussing this topic here. Honestly, it was very easy to just put the questions into the panel and let everyone talk. Thank you so much for joining everyone who joined us here live. This video will be published on YouTube on the Social Rising channel, which is underused anyways. As of now, I'll quickly share it as well. Would be great to see everyone again on other events. We are hosting now an event every 2 weeks, either the standard social media creators and influencer meetup or a specific discussion around a specific topic. We are creating the topics within the community. Thank you all. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Gwarlan. Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.